So, I'm the grandmother of the Cosmopolitan Chicken. And I'm so happy to have, I just said to Koen, I'm so happy I met you before you were famous. I had the great good fortune to be in Hasselt in the summer of 1999 when the ring was just being finished. I remember when it was impossible to drive into Hasselt, and that it was also impossible for the period of time that the road was being dug up. But somehow there was art taking place in the Provincial Limburg Museum. It was a wonderful exhibition curated by Jan Hoot, the very important museum director from this part of the world, and it was also organized by Annemie van Leeten, who is here tonight. And I want to ask you all one very important question, which is, what do you think about when you see this? Because as someone who had been in the art world for over 20 years at the time, I walked into this very simple exhibition space in the center of Hasselt, and I had the wonderful, exciting moment of seeing white chickens walking around on a dirt floor. And behind them, which you will see in a second, was a film in black and white of a man who you all know now eating chicken. And I looked through the doorway because at that moment you were not allowed to walk onto the floor. And I saw these chickens, and having spent a fair amount of time in Belgium previously, I was really quite familiar with the work of Marcel Groters. And I looked at these chickens and I looked at the film and I said to myself, this is not about chickens. And I have been telling people for the last 14 years that this is an artist who works with chickens, yes, but the work is not about chickens. And I think coming from Belgium, where you are all very familiar with the work of Magritte and the very famous Ce n'est pas une pipe. There's something in the Belgian character that likes playing with images, metaphor, objects, and questions. And I think one of the great things you can do as an artist is ask questions that no one else in politics, in science, in mathematics, in economics can ask. And the way in which artists do this is by first getting your attention with something you do not understand. And so in this exhibition we had a film, which was silent, of a man eating chicken. We had the ladders where the chickens could get up and sit in front of the film as if it was a kind of live performance. And then we had the white chickens running around, going in and out of the museum building on a plank. And what you will see is an incubator when you walk into another room, and a wall filled with images of the breeding program and texts on the walls, which looked very reminiscent to me of work by Hannah Darboven, who you might have seen in the 80s if you were going to museums and galleries in Cologne, in Brussels. But here was someone who had a complete idea. I had never heard of him before, I had not met him before, but he had a complete idea. He had his vocabulary, he had his medium, and he had a big question, which I couldn't answer, but it made me very, very curious. And he clearly had a sense of himself not as a farmer, and not as a geneticist, but as someone who was taking elements of the natural world and putting them into such a format that you would look at them differently. And this is when you are in the presence of greatness in an artistic capacity, whether it's a musician or a composer or an actor or a director or a playwright or an artist, someone who's dealing with poetic structures. When you walk into a museum and you see something like this, even if you do not understand what you're looking at, it takes your breath away if you're a sensitive, thoughtful person. And so, of all of the artists, including the ones that I had brought from London who were showing in another part of the exhibition, this was something that bothered me. And I didn't know what the exhibition was about, and I didn't know what the installation was called until I walked out. And this was the first breeding of the poulet de Bresse. So what I then learned was that all of the ladies wandering around in this dirt floor were female chickens from France. And there was one very hardy, handsome Belgian cock, yes, in a cage outside of the museum, going cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-doo, and the white chickens were running in and out of the museum trying to see him, and he was trying to see them, and I thought this was the funniest thing I'd ever seen in my life. Very interesting. You could watch it for hours. Desire unconsummated. What could be better? And all in the name of contemporary art. So here we had a very special moment where you see the white French demure hen looking oh so je ne sais quoi, and this very sturdy, robust Belgian. And I have a long history with sturdy, robust Belgians. I married one. He was very sturdy, very robust, very noble, just like the chicken. Right, no, just like the cock. In any case, this was the birth of the Cosmopolitan Chicken. Somewhere that first afternoon, through Annemie and Jan, who had met this very young, rather shy, a bit willy-nilly man, and I was introduced to him, and his name was as long and complicated as my own. Koen Vanmechelen. And I said, listen, congratulations, you've done something quite remarkable here. I don't know if you realize it. And he was very pleased to have somebody who would talk to him about his work. And I said, I have good news and I have bad news. I said, the good news is you have your subject, you have your material, you have your vision, and you have your youth. I said, whether or not you have enough strength and stamina to persevere for 10 years and get the word out that you are not a farmer and that this really is not about chickens. I said, the first 10 years are the gift, and if you can do that, then 10 years from now, we will work together. And he went on to show me a chart that it was not simply an art installation. He had worked out a very global idea about this breeding program. And I thought either he was mad or he was brilliant, or possibly both. And he showed this to me, and he sent me a copy when I was in the Lisson Gallery in London, where I was managing Berkeley for 10 years. And I produced a shot in the head, and I'm very proud of this. It was a real leap of faith. So what Koen said to me, we have to get a British hen to make babies with the male offspring from the first generation, and I thought this was really amusing. All the girls in the gallery were pregnant. What the hell, let's do this too. And so there are the two girls. We had two English red cap hens. One, as you can see, was a bit older than the other. One was a little bit more developed than the other. And I thought they were going to be very good friends. Little did I know, I did not have sisters. Little did I know that there would be this intense female rivalry between these two girls. And as you can see, we have very beautiful photographic work, just as we still have, and the incubator was present. And all of the aspects, the formal aspects that make Koen's work so visually stunning were present in the summer of 2000. And so we took the front room of this very famous Tony Fretton Gallery building in London on Bell Street, opening on this very nice schoolyard. And we built the pens. So we had the instructions, we had the patterns on the wall, and we had the chickens. And there are the two ladies, and the picture of the man is on the wall next to them. So he's standing there. But there was a very big problem because the two girls were so much at each other, and the big one was eating the feathers off the back of the neck of the small. And I said to myself every day looking at this is not about chickens. This is not about chickens. This is not about chickens. And I was giving lectures to the team in the gallery and to the collectors who were coming in and to the curators from the Tate. This is not about chickens. And then one day I called Koen and I said, look, I know, you know this is not about chickens, but what are we going to do? We don't have any fertilized eggs yet. And he said, I think we have a problem with the women. So he came back to London and he took the one who was being more aggressive with the younger one who was a little bit more petite. And he put the big one in a bag, took her away, and then the rest was nature. So this is not about chickens. I think it's important to understand that, you know, Koen's work is about all of us. It's about the society we've created. It's about animals and nature. And we are animals and we are part of nature. And art is an extension of all of these structures and all of these poetic infrastructures, because the only thing that holds it all together is that sense of poetic structure as well. And here you have the cock, who is half Belgian, looking out the window at the schoolyard. And in a sense, this was the question of the first installation, is what is inside and what is outside, and what is domestic and what is savage, and what is constructed and what is natural. And I think that we live in a world where these questions are more and more important today than they were in 2000. And it's something very important. One day we had babies, and this was also a kind of extraordinary magical moment. To hear the cheep, 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 cheep. They were different colors, they were different shapes, they were different forms, as we are as well. And on the upper left you have the red cap Belgian Mechels and Cuckoo, and the French Poulet de Bresse, and their offspring is in the first level. And so that was the beginning of the 17 generations that we have all lived through, watched, and experienced. And I have to say, having experienced all of this before Koen had enough money to make sexy films and travel the world, in a way, this is where it started. And I think it's very important always to go back to your roots, particularly for the artists, because we live in a world where the subject and the content can often be tied up in wrapping paper with very beautiful bows, and it's important to realize what the core content is. And very few artists discover their core subject at such a young age as Koen Vanmechelen, and it was a great honor to stumble upon his work. It's been a great pleasure to watch him grow and develop, and I think the next 10 years will show us all more questions than answers, and I urge you all to ask more questions and look at the work in another way than what you anticipate understanding. It's a discourse that is many layers, it's got many levels. Some are comfortable, some are not. It brings up many different topics that couldn't be more relevant than the world that we're living in today. And even with the fancy films, it's a work that has a base very much, as we saw in the first image, of the ground underneath the feet of all of us. And this is something that it makes Koen the very special artist that he is. So that's the end from the grandmother.